Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. We are playing through version 1.00 of the Japanese release, and last time, we came here to this very mysterious, strange place. Doesn't seem to have any entrance, really, let alone exit. Well, we can explore. Maybe we'll find something in that regard. But that's certainly not how we came here. We just sort of showed up in this room. We showed up here because we got grabbed by a strange, invisible creature that suddenly, in a cutscene, I guess, we became able to see. We heard it referred to as amygdala. We were sent there by a strange individual who suddenly showed up in lots of houses. Actually, I think that's a little bit of a gameplay convenience. I think you're supposed to talk to that character once behind one house, because of the way the dialogue resets and everything, and the rest of the houses are just sort of an insurance policy, and then you're supposed to, go follow the instructions. But, that could just be incorrect. I don't know. Maybe you're supposed to think of that character as being literally everywhere. You can make of that what you will. But I, having, talked to that person, getting sent here, all that stuff, I was unsure exactly how I wanted to proceed. And having had a little bit of time to think about it, I realized, first of all, that it's going to make sense for us to go through the Forbidden Woods first before we come to this particular location again, because I think it'll just make more sense to progress through the game that way. And then also, there's something I want to do, first of all, in the world of Yharnam, because I still haven't talked to the various people, except for those, chanters who were asking, bless us with blood earlier in the night. And then once we defeated Vicar Amelia and the night progressed to, full-on darkness, actual night, they started screaming incoherently, so something's afoot, but we've got other people to check in on. Maybe some people are doing a little better? I don't know. We'll find out. And then there's also some things I want to do in the dream. So that's where we're going to head first. I will see you back in the dream. Alright, here we are again, in the familiar old dream, and there are a few things that we have to do here. The first one of which I don't particularly relish, but I think this is important, and I've gotten some comments saying, you should probably do this thing. It's sort of important to the developing storyline with the doll that we've been going on. I agree, ultimately. I didn't want to do it in this playthrough. Maybe if I do it now, I won't do it in Translation Born. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But what you can do is you can attack the doll, and when you do, something is going to happen. So pay attention to what happens here. There are a few things to note. First of all, and most obviously, there's going to be what happens when she takes damage. And maybe I'll use some editing to drive the point home a little bit. But let's stop stalling. We're going to attack the doll here. Okay. I feel so bad doing that. Anyway, perhaps you caught it. When you strike the doll, there's this grayish substance that flows out of her. And that grayish substance is notably different from the substance that flies out of most of the enemies that we fight in the game. And, a doll sheds neither blood nor tears, right? In a very literal translation, right? And there's a reason why I think you can make it so that the Japanese is clearly playing on both senses of that phrase, right? The idea that, yes, it means heartless, right? A doll has no emotions, but at the same time, literally, a doll should not be able to shed blood. We've just seen it's this weird gray ooze stuff, maybe. And then we've also gotten the one tear that she quote-unquote shed wasn't actually a tear. It was a tear stone that we turned into a blood gem, right? So not exactly what you would expect and all of this stuff that's happening in the dream. But you'll notice I've got this prompt here, right? It says investigate. So what happens if I say investigate to the unmoving doll? Oh, that's something else. But by the way, before I investigate, note that her fingers are completely immobile, right? The clothing is still moving a little bit because we've got things like the breeze blowing through. You can see it in the flowers as well. And the plants, they're sort of moving with this impossible breeze, just to let you know that this place is not like a static image. And we've got a little mist going on in the background, so there seems to be some airflow happening here, and you can see that in the doll's clothing. But if you look at her fingers in particular, it's not like in the other workshop, where you've got that one finger that's twitching, that potentially indicates a connection to the consciousness that this doll has here in this dream. In this case, fingers are completely immobile. This doll, aside from the clothing, is basically completely immobile. That's potentially worth noting. And then if we investigate, we can see that we still have the ability to channel our blood echoes. The other option is leave. We don't have the talk option. That option has been removed. We also already gave her the small hair ornament, so that's also not an option. But, so we have a contracted menu, but the most important thing that we want to do, which is channel the will of the slain, or the dead, doesn't have to be slain, channel the will of the dead into our being, that channel it out of the blood and into ourselves to strengthen us. We can still do that when there is no consciousness in the doll. So, what does that say about the nature of the doll's being? What does that say about the nature of the doll's consciousness? And this sort of goes along with what I was mentioning when I was talking about how, yeah, for the first part of the game, once you realize the doll is alive, after you get some insight, and then you continue to talk with her, and you have these conversations, you start to feel like, oh, the doll is basically just a person. But after you've had this sort of interaction, where I'm just actually going to level up to show you it's not like a fluke or anything, I can gain these 2 levels just fine. And there's no chant, right? Normally she does, stand close, now shut your eyes. And then when you back out of it, right, you get another potential dialogue. When you leave, you get another dialogue for sure. All of that is missing. So anything that requires consciousness on the part of the doll is gone, but she can still fulfill the function. And so there's sort of a strand of thought among some people who play Bloodborne that the doll is sort of a creation of this dream. And there is a great one that is associated with this dream. I've already said as much when I was talking about, say, the Moon Rune. And so maybe the doll is an extension of this great one. And maybe the doll not only is a different sort of being from us, right? This is what I was getting at with that whole dialogue, right? You start to feel like the doll is a person. And then you get the dialogue where she says, oh, I'm one of your creations, essentially, a creation of you humans. And that's why I love you. And it's this unfaltering love that I'm giving essentially because that's part of the nature of my being. So, is she really a person? If she is a person, is she the same as a human? Can we differentiate these types of beings? Are we essentially, because we created her, or we collectively, our character didn't create her, but because she is a creation of humans, are humans essentially like gods to the doll, and she has no will in the matter? Or is a part of her personality, like, valid, but that's not all that she is, because it can be separated from her body? If her body can dwell, or if her spirit can dwell in her body in the dream, what does that say about other things that are tied to the dream? Remember all the death stuff that we've got going on in the dream? We've got the messengers who, they're the pun on the idea of the dead, right? Shisha can be messenger, can also mean dead person. We've got them associated with gravestones, right? These are all gravestones here. We've got the box where we keep our stuff, which is fashioned after a coffin, as I learned in this playthrough. Thanks to Chart Thermos. We've got all of these gravestone altars. I forget exactly what the official translation calls them, but these are also altars who are gathered around them. The messengers, which sort of can stand in for the dead. Is her consciousness being here sort of like the messenger's consciousness is being here, persisting after death? Yet for her, it's like the place where she came to be. This is where she was born, this sort of limbo type place. And it starts to make you question not only what is the nature of the doll, but what is the nature of the dream, right? And this is why I think ultimately I really don't like attacking and particularly killing the doll. But I felt like it was important. The people who were leaving comments, thank you for the sort of nudge, where I probably would not have done this on my own in this playthrough. But I think it is a fascinating aspect of the doll's storyline that is worth considering. And the other thing that's worth considering, remember how I was talking about how these are all gravestones and whatever. These are different sorts of gravestones. So if I go up to them and we just look at them in Japanese, we have the Yharnam headstone, or literally it's like a grave stone, but I think it was translated as headstone. Very inconsequential difference there. Not a. We'll just call it the headstones because that's what I remember. Then we have the frontier headstone. Henkyo is like afar, right? And this, appropriately enough, right? This is where we find Hemwick, which is on the outskirts of Yharnam. This is where we find this is the witch's abode, or whatever they called this. This is the boss lantern that we get after defeating the Witch of Hemwick, so also Hemwick. And now the Forbidden Woods, which once again, those are on the outskirts of Yharnam. So we've got those going on there. And if we come over here, we've got the hidden headstone. And the hidden headstone is associated with the underground prison and the abandoned old workshop. So these are places that are technically in Yharnam, but they are not easily seen, right? They're sort of associated with some sort of hidden away, some sort of secret in the world of Yharnam. And then over here, we have the Nightmare Headstone. And that's where we get the lecture hall. So the lecture hall is in a nightmare. And that's sort of why it makes such little sense, right? This is why we get grabbed by that creature, the amygdala, and we get teleported and we just appear in that room. Why? Well, because it's a nightmare. Also, while I'm here at these gravestones, it's important to note, so all the way right up at the top, we have a phrase in Japanese. It says, awaken above ground. Chijo, right? Like, chi means like, the like surface, the ground. It's sort of basically the surface, right? Because you can think of it as like the street level as well. And then ue, or you combine chi and the kanji for ue, which means up, and you get chijo, right? Because it changes reading. And so you have essentially above ground, right? You have like ground level and then above it, and that's one word, and that's chijo, and that's essentially above ground. And then you have no, which is joining those the two key phrases here together. And then we have mezame. That's a noun based off of the verb mezameru, which is to awaken. And as a noun, it just means awakening, right? So awaken. So this is awaken above ground, I believe, is the official translation. That's literally what it is, right? There's not a lot to quibble with there in the translation. But the interesting thing, and this is why I think I mentioned very briefly in a previous episode, that some people want to place the Hunter's Dream on like a level in terms of like up or down in the world of Bloodborne, because as we'll see, verticality is important not just in the level design of Bloodborne, but sort of the world state. You can think of taking place in these different levels of reality. And especially in the DLC, you can see this, even before we get some indications. But this is one of the ways that the DLC really takes what's present in the base game of Bloodborne and sort of amplifies it, because it allows you to sort of see from one layer of reality into others, and confirms, if indeed you believe it was part of the base game to begin with, because again, if we want to, we can take the base game as its own text and analyze it separately from the information we get in the DLC. But if you're not inclined to do that, or right, even if you're going to limit yourself to the base game, maybe you can still get the idea that we have these separate levels of reality. So if you think there are these separate levels of reality, where the Hunter's Dream falls in those levels is potentially important. And I've heard it argued both that the Hunter's Dream is sort of at the bottom of everything, and I've also heard it argued that the Hunter's Dream is at the top of everything. I have no idea which one of those is accurate, if either of them are. I can't offer a huge amount of insight on that, but what I can say, and this is sort of this awaken above ground statement in the official translation, is one of the reasons it gets used in this argument. I don't think the Japanese has any super special insight to offer us in this regard, right? I think essentially that the Japanese provides you with the same information that the English provides you with, in that you get the awaken above ground message. And literally everywhere on this particular row of gravestones, the message is awaken above ground. And if you look down at the bottom, it says choose a location to awaken, or select a location to awaken. It's a little bit tricky if you want to get super literal, because the word I've been translating as location is just a kanji that means like ahead of sometimes. That's sort of its core meaning. But in this case, it's sort of like you awaken forward in that place. That's the way it relates to ahead of, right? So it's sort of like the destination. So please select a destination to awaken, or select an awakening destination. So that's the info we get at the bottom in Japanese, and at the top we also get awaken above ground. Seems a little weird though that this is the nightmare headstone and it's still talking about awakening above ground. Chijo, right? And that's just as weird in English as it is in Japanese. I have no explanation for this. I can just show off that this is a feature of the Japanese. And so I think, if you want to argue that maybe the Hunter's Dream is at the bottom of everything, and therefore you're always awakening above ground, right? Because literally everywhere at the top here, it says, like, above, right? That could be one way that you take it. Maybe not, though, because does it really make sense to awaken above ground in a nightmare? It sort of feels like to me anyway, as always, take whatever evidence I give you in this and do whatever you will with it. But for me, it sort of feels like they came up with this idea for Yharnam, right? And you have the idea that this is a headstone, right? And these are the places that you can awaken above ground in the sense that you are essentially 6 feet under, right? I feel like I've said this before. This is my crazy lore theory. I didn't realize how this sort of ties in until just this moment, but it's kind of fun. The crazy lore theory that I thought at the start of the series was going to be the only thing I was really paying attention to, and it only comes up every, once in a blue moon at this point, is that I suspect our character dies at the very start of the game. That initial blood transfusion, the block in memory that we have, the tie to the dream that we have, I think that's all sort of established as our soul essentially is leaving our body, is... maybe. One of the problems I think with this idea is what happens to the body in this case, and I don't have a good answer for that because I'm just exploring this idea as I do this playthrough. But one thing that I think you could use to sort of go along with this argument is we've got all this association in the dream with coffins and death and all of these other death-related themings. And so I think the idea is sort of the Hunter's Dream is the equivalent of being, dead and buried 6 feet under, and you awaken, after... Oh, thank goodness I chose somewhere that's not active right now. I didn't actually want to warp. You can choose to awaken at a place that is above the sort of 6 feet under this liminal space here that is where we go after we die. And I think they put that text in place here, and it makes sense for Yharnam. It makes sense for almost every headstone. It doesn't really make sense for this headstone because this is a nightmare headstone. And if you're going to go from nightmare to nightmare, who's to say what is or isn't above ground? Who's to say that the limbo that is the place of our death, where our soul essentially has been confined, is above or below any other nightmare? So maybe you can get the verticality to come back in that, but I sort of suspect that, like I said, it's probably something to do with the gameplay convenience, where they had one bit of text that they put on these headstones, and they put it on every headstone, and they didn't think too hard about it. Now, I could be dead wrong about that, right? There's people who want to take even more seriously than I do, and they want they want patches to be behind every door to be part of the actual story of Bloodborne. Might be. They could be right. I don't know. I don't think that way, and like I said at the very start of this series, I tend to sort of ascribe a lot of things to video gaming convenience in a way that I think a lot of lore hunters prefer not to. But I mean, that's what I think there. And I think one of the things that we can look to for evidence of this is when I come here, the very first thing that comes up at the top, right? This one is not Awaken Above Ground. This one is the Tumerian Ruins, or the Ruins of Tumuru, however you want to call it. And then down at the very bottom, right above the, share dungeon, go back, confirm, select, right, the actual line of text, that part is the same. Select a destination to awaken. right? So we're still awakening somewhere, but this location is not above ground. And this time it makes sense, right? Because this is not an above ground location. This is a chalice dungeon location, which the game has repeatedly told us, the Tomb of the Gods, it's carved out beneath Yharnam. So when it comes to differentiating, I think what they did was they had basically two versions. They had the underground labyrinth setups with these altars, these grave altars in the dream. And so all these grave altars, none of them, whenever we put a chalice dungeon here, none of them will say awaken above ground. They will say awaken at a destination in whatever chalice dungeon you have unlocked. Whatever the seals are that you've unlocked, that's where you awaken in that particular dungeon. And then all of these ones are the ones that will allow you to awaken above ground. And they sort of copied that text all across here. And they sort of stand in contrast, just as they do physically stand in contrast, where we have, one side going up this way and the other side going up that way. Also, I don't know, there's sort of an immediate counterexample I can think of to this thought, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, because, hey, I'm speculating and talking about weird stuff that I don't fully understand all the time in this episode, apparently. But I sort of, when I was thinking of the death theming, pretty much everywhere that we could awaken, where one of those lanterns appears, is associated with a death. Except for Central Yharnam. Because that's one place you can climb up that ladder, after you awaken in the clinic, and you can actually activate that lantern and warp out of there. The other places, right, you beat a boss and a lantern appears. Obviously, that place is associated with death. The first floor sick room, potentially another exception, or you could see that as where we die, right? However, maybe that's all worthless speculation because, we have Central Yharnam right here that has always been available to us. So, anyway, I don't know how much you can really get out of all of this gravestone lore, but I do think it's interesting to think about, and some of it I've never really thought about before, and that's sort of one of the things I've been trying to do to help me enjoy this, 10-year celebration, is just going and thinking about the game in ways that I haven't before, allowing it to sort of hit me in ways that I've previously sort of rejected. So that has been an interesting bit of speculation. I have repaired my weapons. Let's just see if Gehrman's around here. If he was, we would get a slightly different dialogue. It looks like he's not on this particular occasion. So we'll have to keep that in mind before we make too much progress, but I imagine it won't be that hard to have a dialogue with Gehrman at some point. But anyway, I think that's enough speculation on the dream. There is a little bit more to say about the doll, but we can't do it yet because she is currently, obviously, out of commission. So we're going to warp back into Yharnam and start getting some dialogues from the people there, and we'll see where the episode goes from there. Okay, now that we are back in Yharnam, and we have gotten that all set with the Patches dialogue, we can go and talk to these people at the various windows again. So we're going to run in and just check up on people, see what's happening in the city of Yharnam, as I was saying before. Let's talk to Gilbert.
Have I heard of Bergenworth? Afraid I can't say that I have. The locals aren't apt to share any local history. I'm afraid I may not be of help for much longer.
Come on, Gilbert. You can rally. You've got the special blood.
I know nothing of a Bergenworth. And I'm afraid I may not be of help for much longer.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like Gilbert is probably right. He doesn't have that much longer for this world. He's been a consistent source of information for us, but we're seeing not only is he nearing the end of his life, but he's also, as he's indicating here, nearing the end of his ability to help us on our way. Bergenworth, at this point, right, we're clearly inquiring about it. And maybe I should have come here before, come to think of it, because the idea that we would be checking up on Bergenworth when I was doing that sort of hypothetical concoction of the route through the game before I went into the Grand Cathedral, Gilbert is one of the people that we could have come to ask. And it turns out, he wouldn't have been able to tell us anything had we once heard this strange word Bergenworth. So, right, maybe in theory, in that theoretical order, we would have talked to Gilbert, found out he couldn't help us, and then talked to Alfred, and he would be like, oh yeah, I can tell you about Bergenworth. Just a simple beast hunter. He is. Alfred. What a liar. I've still got that theory going on. But, yep, so Gilbert can't be of help anymore, and he's not doing so well. There we go. Oh, and I'm reminded now, this moveset, I had a thought, and I want to test this, because this is something I thought in editing, and I'm not sure how accurate it is. I suspect that the moveset of the small sword is very similar to the moveset of the big sword. So, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. You see it? It's a sort of horizontal swing one way, then the other way, and then downward. So I sort of wonder how much the fact that there is that strong resemblance between this string of R1s, I wonder how much that influences people appreciating this weapon. Because it's not two totally different movesets that you have to get used to. It's a very similar sort of moveset in each version of the weapon. Also, I'm curious. Okay, if I just tap R2, I get that. If I hold it, I get that. So both stabs, and then I remember that if I just tap it, yep, it's a stab. And then if I charge it, yes. Okay, so this has to be one of the easier trick weapons to pick up because the movesets are so similar. I think if I want to contrast that, we've got 1, 2, 3, right? Sort of 3 horizontal swings. I transform it. 1, 2, 3, right? It's a different set of moves. So not every trick weapon works that way. Ludwig's Holy Blade does. So I wonder now how much that sort of helped people when they were like first exploring this game and they have all these very complicated weapons and movesets to master and get used to. The fact that Ludwig's Holy Blade is so familiar from one to the other. I wonder how much of a role that played or plays. Interesting. Anyway, let's see how people are doing besides Gilbert. It's another screaming situation. I think there's still more. Alright, that might be a repeat. We're just getting strange noises, right? These aren't screams as such, but they're very unusual. So whatever's happening that was affecting the people in those houses sort of by in between those two churches, the people who are asking to be blessed with blood, that stuff, it's happening here too. That's what I like to see. Yeah. Alright, let's just kill these enemies because I don't want them interrupting me as I talk to people. Uh-oh. Interesting. I like the transform mode of this. Sort of like the axe, right? I really just like having it in two-handed mode. That was a decent amount of rally I got off that attack, too. Not bad at all. And I'll take the blood vials, of course. It's always good to have those. Alright, the enemies are defeated, and the bells should hopefully be done ringing for now. And my lantern? Yeah, my lantern looks like it's on. Okay, so let's check in on this person.
Stop right there. Not an inch closer.
So this time, remember we're getting that information. Sometimes even the people inside are going bad? Sounds like one person has sort of maintained their senses, but maybe they're dealing with someone else who hasn't. So we've got a little bit of a through line. Besides Gilbert, Gilbert's holding on. Gilbert is doing pretty good. So long, pal. I thought this was a different set of stairs. Gilbert's holding on pretty well. He's, his illness is getting worse, but he's still maintained his sanity. He's been able to say, Bergenworth. No, I don't know anything about that. The locals won't share any information with me, right? So there's that aspect of things, right? Not everybody is being affected. This person, at least one person in the house, is still maintaining their senses. So not everybody has really lost it, but other people, you know, we've got the weird noises from that one door. We've got the strange screams from the others. We've got this person. One person seems sane. The other person, possibly now beast, is not definitely not treating them that way. So, yeah, not great. And we're going to keep following up on the citizens of Yharnam here. See how they're doing. And we didn't send anyone to Erden Chapel, but even there, people would be having their issues at this point. Maybe not to the extent that everyone else is. Maybe I'm thinking of a different point in the game. But anyway, we didn't do that storyline, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Let's see how this person's doing.
Poor you.
So we're getting a little bit of a variation here. This person appears to be losing it in the sense that they've sort of given in to their worst impulses, right? They have this manic laughter, and it seems like they're giving into that sort of enjoyment of the fact that they don't have to worry and we do, right? That sort of superiority, and that's coming out in this manic energy, right? And I think you can see the tie to the pull towards beasthood, right? That idea of reveling in euphoric feeling that we get that's associated with bestial transformation in our, as a hunter. We're seeing this ecstasy, this strange mania that's happening with this character here. So, I don't know how well that person's going to fare either. And we don't need to check up on the lonely old deer. Let's see. I don't want to deal with the crows. I'm going to come over this way. This will potentially trigger one of the enemies to come over and deal with us. The young girl is not here anymore. However, uh-oh, I sort of missed. Not my fault. It's your fault. You die. There we go. Alright, and it's probably blood vials, so, yep, okay, I will use one. I'm super curious about this house, because I think this is the point at which this dialogue glitches out in 1.09. Let's see if it's any better in 1.00. Yeah. Normally, so in 1.09, I'm pretty sure at this point, you get the very start of that dialogue, and then it just abruptly ends. And in 1.00, like, it's not long, right? Even this version of the game is fast, but we're actually getting a reasonably sustained, like, strange noise, and the ... dots are appearing and disappearing in what seems like a regular amount of time. So somewhere along the way, whatever they did in the updates, they seem to have stepped on this dialogue a little bit. And I mean, who cares? It's not a very important dialogue. Let's hear the sage words of this lady again. Who cares? So, you know, if they break that, maybe they don't even bother fixing it, because that might undo something and it might have an effect on the rest of the game that would reduce whatever effect they were going for when they put the things in to begin with, right? Not a huge loss if you lose that little scream of a dialogue. But it sort of builds this narrative of what's happening with Yharnam. As we check in with each one of these houses, as I was sort of saying, you've got the different reactions that form this picture of everything that's happening to the other people on the night of the hunt. And, you know, maybe we don't feel terrible about this, given how, you know, dismissive they were of us, but it still helps build this sort of horrific atmosphere. And I think that's interesting. All right, I think that's all. Oh, I guess there's one more set of houses. Well, no, those are all Cathedral Ward houses. All right, so we have some more houses to check in the Cathedral Ward. What is the best way for me to get there? I don't think it's... Well, if I go up this way, I can warp through the Great Bridge. So maybe this is the way to go, because it will allow me to teleport. Okay. That's fine. Yep. Yep. Boy, this whole situation is completely different when you're really powerful. Don't have to worry about it at all. I'm hoping, yeah, one of these enemies... Oh, it was Quicksilver bullets. Oh, of course, because that was a gunner. I was hoping one of these enemies would drop blood vials for me. Oh well. Being down one a little bit like that isn't a huge loss. Important as blood vials are, I seem to recall I was nearing the maximum. Alright, let's just run past all these foes. Yep, Swipe, swipe. You're all very scary. I'm just gonna keep running. Yeah, I'm terrified. What will I do? Alright, the Great Bridge is closed. We can't go directly through to the Cathedral Ward, but we can warp there. I'll see you soon. Actually, I forgot. I was going to go straight into the Cathedral Ward and cut all this out, but I forgot to point out the doll's back. She's no longer sprawled down and unmoving. She's returned. And if we talk to her now...
Hello, good hunter. I am a doll, here in this dream to look after you. Honorable hunter, pursue the echoes of blood, and I will channel them into your strength. You will hunt beasts, and I will be here for you to embolden your sickly spirit.
That's the very first dialogue that we ever got from the doll. And if we talk to her, I've never tried this. I wonder what happens if we talk to her.
Hunters have told me about the church.
Okay.
But I am with you. Of course,
All right.
I do. Isn't that?
So her speech is still tied to the latest event in the world. So that doesn't completely reset. But talking to her initially, right, recreates that introductory dialogue for the doll.
Farewell.
So,
may you...
in that sense, is this the same doll? Right? We sort of maybe had something of a relationship with the doll that we were building up across time. Did we knock the spirit out of one doll and then a new spirit has dwelled within the formless doll as a function of this nightmare? What exactly is happening? Is this the same person who's lost their memory? You know, because we lose our memory at the very start of the game. That's not impossible. There's not a great explanation. This is really, the doll is one of the mysteries of Bloodborne. But all of that is important to bear in mind, right? There's some more evidence for you that there's something interesting happening with the doll and the doll's story. And if anyone has, more developed theories, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd be interested to read through them. I think it's a fascinating aspect of this game, even if there aren't any, hard answers to what's going on here. But I'm now going to continue my warping around, and we will actually go to the Cathedral Ward. I'll check back in with you when that is complete. Right, here we are back in the Cathedral Ward, and we need to go ascend Erden Chapel so we can descend Erden Chapel. And I sort of figured the elevator would be up, but we can call it back down. Not a huge problem. Just a little bit of waiting. There we go, and now we can ascend. Gotta be ready for this gunner. There we go. Looks like I'm actually going in the correct direction. So long. Don't even need I know for a fact at this point that I don't need the Quicksilver bullets, so I will just leave them. Run past all these enemies. Here we are, back at the Healing Church Workshop, where Ludwig crafted his alternative weapons in his brand new style. Okay. We're not interested in the main part of the Healing Church Workshop. I could have landed on the intervening beams and taken a little less damage, but I don't think we need to do that. All right, remember to roll at the edge. There we are. And one more roll. Good. And one more blood vial. Will that do it? Not quite, but that's okay. Not super low on health. All right, and I should be able to get this dialogue without issue. Let me just clear out these cans here. All right, here we go. That dialogue has to have been mixed extra low for like 1.00, right? I swear that that's some sort of mistake, because in, I'm going to guess it's voices. Let's turn all these other ones down. I swear this dialogue is louder, even if it is a little bit quiet in 1.09. I do not normally have this hard of a time hearing this character.
A night of curses. A night to remember. Wouldn't you say, friend?
Okay, and I'm also curious what's going to happen with that character's dialogue once we get to the sort of next phase of the night. Because, spoiler alert, there's more to come. The night is not yet over. And in 1.09, that dialogue is sort of glitched. Uh-oh. Doesn't... So this is the problem with the... this sword here, right? It swings over their heads. Have I not tried L2? Okay, there it is. So L2 in transform mode is the downward swing. Good to know. Can I chain those? 1, 2. Okay. I've got just a tiny little bit of stamina left after I do that. Let's see if there's a 3. 1, 2, 3. There is! Oh, cool! Oh, that's super neat. The, like, over-the-shoulder slam. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, bad news, everybody. I like this weapon. Oh, boy. Okay, they spotted me. I'm gonna use my crowd control swings. Look at that. It worked exactly like I speculated. It worked. I killed one, and then I hit the other. It didn't die, and then there was one downward swing to attack the one enemy that was left. Beautiful. Okay, now I can call this elevator back. Having done so, Gameplay Met then speculated again on whether the dialogue from the NPC we just talked to will work any better in 1.00 as opposed to 1.09, only he still didn't mention specifics. The thing is, in version 1.00 and 1.09 alike, that man's lines are the same as they were when we first knocked on his door during an earlier part of the hunt. In 1.09, this means that even as the night gets worse, this character can still be heard having a good time. Though according to the lore translation guide, by then, his dialogue is supposed to have advanced to the point that he's fallen silent. To me, this makes it something of a glitch that his character gets to party right through the night of the hunt, and so I'm curious how his lines are treated in 1.00. Since we just got a repeat dialogue from him, I'm not optimistic that his dialogue will advance according to the lore translation guide in 1.00 either, but there's really only one way to be sure, as Gameplay Met can tell you. And, I don't know, we'll have to find out when I do my next sort of check-in on the people around Yharnam in the Cathedral Ward. We'll see. Sort of out of the way to come and check on that character, but it is important. Well, I don't know how important it is. It is interesting. And that's another one of the people, right? We're talking about the cumulative effect of all of these dialogues. That's another one of the people who is in sort of revelry mode. They've had their sort of manic energy enhanced. As opposed to the people who are just screaming or seem to be dealing with other people who are transforming. Oh no. Oh, that was bad. I knew it was coming and I still couldn't get out of the way. No, I need L2. Oh, I lucked out. I turned to attack the crow and was like, I'm doomed! And then realized, actually, no, I'm not. You, though. I wonder how good... Okay, the 1-2 on the L2 is a little bit slow, but it does get a stagger on these enemies, and these enemies are a little bit tricky to stagger, so that's good to know. Okay, and there are going to be some enemies that I need to clear out. One of them that uses that weird, like, rake. So, there you are. Hello. Oh, it's faster than me. Yeah, the short version of this weapon is a little bit slow compared to the other one. Oh, we got it! We got it! No! Alright, well, that still probably damaged the enemy enough. Uh-oh. Okay, it did. It damaged the enemy enough that I could finish it off with one more attack. Uh-oh. I finally got hit by that bullet. Can't dodge it forever. Can dodge it when I need to, though. Alright, yeah, I knew you were there. I remember that you get up to attack from behind. Normally I have to go, like, seek out that enemy. Oh, I'm gonna have to turn off sound effects because this guy's still building his clock. Or whatever it is. Okay. Oh, nope, I don't want stats. I want settings. Goodbye all of this stuff. Alright. Now let's get another background dialogue here. We've only got this one and the house across the way, and I think that's everybody.
My baby! My precious little baby! Stay away! Stay away from us!
So this dialogue is sort of the most fun because you can sort of take it either way. You can take it as she's still afraid of the healing church and she wants them to stay away from her precious little baby. Or you can take it as her baby has sort of transformed because we know people on the inside are going bad. And now she wants the baby to stay away. And she's horrified at the transformation that's taken place in front of her. That works in both English and Japanese. I took some time to make sure that that was the case in Translation Born. So if you're interested in a detailed look at that dialogue in Japanese, you can go check out that episode. I'll try and find what episode that was and put it up in the form of a note on the screen when I'm editing. But it is interesting. I personally lean on the side of the transformation because of the other dialogue that we've gotten with the guy in Central Yharnam who wants someone to keep away, right? So I sort of suspect the worst in that situation. But you don't have to. It's up to interpretation. And I've kept the sound effects off for now because I don't think they're going to be hugely important when I knock on this door. So let's see what the actual dialogue is.
Help me! Please help!
So here we have a plea for help. I sort of suspect that in the case of this character, it's more of that sort of, I want to say manic influence, but I think what we're seeing is the effect of the bravado stripped away, right? He was sort of making some reckless remarks about the healing church and sounded a little bit drunk before. He still sounds a little bit drunk now, but is more like he's no longer at a place where he can be flippant. He's more directly afraid and seeking help, and may be dealing with the effects of some transformation that have begun to work their way into his frame of mind. So that's the state of Yharnam. It's not doing so great. And of course, there won't be anyone here because we've sent these people to the nice, safe, wonderful location of, not the cathedral or the Urden Chapel, the Yusefka, imposter Yusefka. We've got them in her care. She's taking care of them. I'm sure of it. Anyway, that concludes our check-in on Yharnam and the Dream for now. So I would like to thank all of you for watching. And I'm going to call an end to my hunt for the evening here, but I wish all of you good hunting.